I like to open my presentations with a picture of Burning Man, the Burning Man festival, right? That's rather uncommon. People usually start with quotes by dead people, minimum one Nobel Prize. No, but the reason I do that is because I consider it the privilege of our generation to live in the exponential technologies age and to get to live through the unfolding of those transformative technologies is a true privilege. Now, there's a lot of hype going on, and I did enjoy the dog and pony show we had before. That's quite entertaining, but at the end of the day, I believe we have to look at the facts and get rid of the emotions, because if we want to have mass adoption, this is what it comes down to. And the one thing I always do, and everybody who has ever encountered me has to suffer through this slide. And I honestly believe if you understand that one slide, you cannot go wrong when it comes to innovation, technology, and even investments. And the reason I'm bringing it is because I want you to understand why regulation also is important, why the combination of the two will decide on how we go forward and where we will be. So this is basically a synthesis of two findings, one from Harvard and one from MIT. The one that is most known is the bell curve of adoption underneath, but the one which I consider more important is the S-curve by Professor Atterbeck. And what it basically tells you is that any innovation ever in the history of innovations has unfolded like that, in the shape of an S-curve. At the beginning, there's a lot of innovation going on, hundreds and thousands of players trying to do their thing, thousands of blockchains, a gazillion of coins out there, right? Until at some point, the dominant design emerges. And once you have that dominant design, everything switches from innovation to incremental improvement. And the industry goes from thousands of players to something like 50 on average. And you have upwards consolidation until you reach a situation where you have big companies that are run usually by guys in ties, which then is the trigger for what we call disruption, because they usually don't get the technology part anymore, right? They literally look down at those crazy kids coming out of a garage or out of a laboratory, trying to tell them what the future is going to be like. And hence, this is also what disruption really means. I'm very conscious of the very word disruption. Everybody uses it, very few understand it. Disruption basically means everybody dies. Nobody in the history of innovation and disruption has ever made it from one S-curve to the other. I cannot think of a horse carriage producer who today is an important car producer. I'm very hard-pressed to come up with a typewriter producer who today produces the tablet of your choice, right? There are some intermediary cases like IBM. This is disruption. Now, this is in the pure technology field. Most things we talk about in the context of blockchain and crypto borders on the financial services industry. Now, the financial services industry is not about technology. I like to say I'm with my bank not because of its technology, but despite its technology. Right? There's another trigger. But it's important to know that the same dynamic plays out in the financial services space, but the trigger is a different one. And the trigger is regulation. Now, I know you will say he's a regulatory lawyer, so obviously he has to say that, but it is true. I come from Switzerland, and we learned that the hard way. We had decades of prosperity and money for nothing and chicks for free, as you might say, right? Based on a very cunning business model which we had and which was built around banking secrecy and other assets, right? Now that's gone. And what happens if you find yourself not in compliance with the new dominant design created by regulation? Well, effectively you're building horse carriages. Switzerland is the third most important market in the world for the distribution of fund products. Switzerland, within 15 years, got erased off the face of the planet as a fund domicile. Why? Because our funds, also our regulatory text, mirrors the AIFMD and UCITS and other directives almost one by one. Well, it's not a UCITS fund, it's not an AIF. Hence, it doesn't qualify, and hence we're building horse carriages. So if you're trying to undertake anything in cryptocurrencies, be it as an investor or be it as a promoter of a new solution, you have to get two things right. The technology solution and the regulatory solution. And in both cases, you have to find that dominant design that will win the hearts and the wallets, be it cold or not, of those out there. So that is the challenge, but that's also the big prize out there. So I think it's a fundamental concept which people have to embrace. And what I see working day in day with this exciting community of people out there shaping the future is they're either coming from the technology sphere, and hence they detest people like myself, lawyers. That's the guys who couldn't cut it for real university, right? Or they come from the other side who do not respect the technology. So that is the trick to get it right. So with that being said, let me give you some hard facts. Where are we right now in this circle? Obviously, I have no clue where we are in the adoption circle. Otherwise, I would be standing up here, right? I would be out there investing like crazy all day long. But let me give you some of our findings to give you an idea of where we might be heading, where you might be allocating, or what you might be building. Here we tried to, don't try to read it, it's a typical lawyer slide, but you can get it afterwards if you're interested. We tried to replicate, if you like, the footprint, the blueprint of a financial system, right? That's the elements you have. And the amazing thing, and we sometimes don't appreciate that, is that within less than 10 years for the crypto space, a working system of some sorts has arisen, which allows to do most of those things that we've come to know and then some, where previously we had 100 years to build it. But that being said, not all elements are quite there yet, right? Things like yes, wallets, that's easy. ATM for Bitcoin in Switzerland, very easy. You walk into the main station, you draw your Bitcoins, whatever. Other things, data. I mean, there's people out there doing managed futures type strategies on cryptocurrencies. And then I ask them, what data are you basing your strategies on? And then they tell me it's on exchange data rather than on-chain data. Now the delta between the two is as big as the ocean that separates these isles from the colonies, right? So how can you do that? Well, because it's not available yet. So there is bits and pieces that are not there yet, but they are developing, they are coming. We recently did an M&A report looking at the global market, and what you see there is that we've seen a fundamental shift. America was dominating clearly in the last year. This year we've seen a huge shift towards Europe and Asia. Right? There's a lot more action happening here. Asia is clearly on the rise. The average sums have decreased a little, but they're kind of stable. We've done a long-term study and we're still digging into the fundamentals, but obviously fundraising has a huge correlation to the Bitcoin price. Some other currencies as well, but Bitcoin is still dominating. It's emotionally, I always call it, it's the Kardashian of blockchains. It's famous for being famous, right? So it's like those influencers on Instagram. Not trying to put anything down, I'm just trying to explain the dynamic. It's very important. So there's even some market timing going on with that. So we're bringing out a new research very shortly, which will give you more insight into this. So again, what I'm trying to tell you here is if you're out there fundraising, you must be looking at Asia, right? US obviously has its challenges anyway to access that market, but you can't ignore it, but it's not as important any longer as it used to be. We also did a fund report. There's a lot of fund offerings now cropping up, but again, the data, if you look at it, there's something like 150 crypto funds out there right now. The average size is 10 million. And depending on where you are, most of them are indeed, again, in the US and in Asia. When you look into Europe, mostly in the UK and so forth. Mostly discretionary strategies, but we're also seeing some first systematic strategies being applied. There's a lot more information in that report. I'm really just trying to point it out. It's available on our webpage. And again, there will be an update presented at the, I believe, Crypto Financing Conferences in Moritz in January. We also do an ICO STO report. Probably have to rebrand it now to exchange offerings or whatever. I think it's the 5th iteration we did. And again, don't try to read it. You will find it online. But the key findings is, obviously, ICOs are still a bit dead in the water. There was, yes, some shift towards STOs, but it clearly hasn't picked up where we left the ICO market or bubble, if you care, to see it like this. And now the new kid on the block is obviously direct listings on exchanges, which is an indication of an industry moving towards institutional grade activity. Now, that being said, obviously, we're currently mostly using non-regulated, or not non-regulated, but offshore exchanges because we're still not able to do it onshore. Once that happens, that will be a game changer, obviously, and the cost will come down. So it's coming back. The numbers are picking up again, but it's not quite where it used to be. And the new indications we have, they're kind of getting there. Now, lastly, regulation. This is usually where everybody rushes for the door, but I hope I came across with my key message from the beginning that you need to understand regulation. Otherwise, you will be building horse carriages. Now, there's a lot going on globally. We just took some snapshots. Again, we have a global report, and I urge you, if you're in the business of building the future in crypto or indeed in blockchain, you have to be aware of the regulatory developments. Non-compliance is not an option, right? You have to understand it, like it or not. It's part of the cost of doing business. It's part of your business. If you want the trust of the people for the adoption, this is what you got to do. So I'm not going around here, just shows you some indications. I'm just highlighting two things. Obviously, being from Switzerland, I'm not trying to parade our country. I just like to point out two things. I'm very, very proud that we very recently had the first 2 banking licenses issued to crypto-only players, Sygnum and SEBA. I'm not talking about my work, but we had a little hand in some of that. Not all of that, and we're working with some more. It's a very strong sign. FINMA, our regulator, is by no means a light touch regulator. It's a very strict regulator. So them granting the first licenses is an important sign. You probably heard about SIX, the Swiss Stock Exchange, launching its Swiss Digital Exchange project. That's going forward. We're expecting it to be live probably at the end of next year, which again will be a huge sign. So in terms of timeline, this is what leads to the adoption. Because sorry to say, we are the freaks and the geeks in this room. If you go out on the street and you ask anybody out there, right, they will still not tell you they're holding Bitcoin or anything, right? So only once the technology is buried so deep in the application that you don't even know it's there, this is when you get mass adoption. And in the financial services space, you need the trust of the players in the ecosystem to put the rubber stamp on it, maybe like it or not. And yes, that ecosystem is expanding. There's new players coming to the table, but there still needs that regulatory seal of approval if they want to win the trust of institutionals and later, obviously, the retail space. So again, just using that as examples, that things are moving. Now for us, obviously, they're not moving fast enough, but if you put things into perspective, into a global perspective, I think they're moving really fast, and we can be proud of that. I'm not talking about that because we will have very competent colleagues talking about the Liechtenstein Act, which recently passed Parliament, and obviously Liechtenstein being next door to Switzerland and kind of synergetically connected to the crypto valley in Switzerland. I think it's an important development because without sucking up to anybody, I believe what has been done there in the creation of the concept for that act is amazing. Right? The definitions they've come up with, if you're a legal geek like my good self, and if you dive into that, it is impressive. And I hope that it will provide inspiration for all the efforts going on European level, because let's be honest, as much as I love the Principality and as much as I love my little Switzerland, it's not important in the world. Right? So it will be important what the EU does and obviously what America does and Asia does. But what we've seen, like the Swiss token classification, has provided a lot of inspiration of what other places have done. I do hope that a lot of the definitions that have been created in this act will find their way in global regulation as it emerges. So I know I will never manage to turn you into embracers of regulation, but at least I hope I manage to make you aware of the importance of regulation, how to combine the technology elements with the regulation if you want to build the future or participate in the future. Here is my contact details, all of them, including my private Telegram, as I just realized. But please, by all means, do free to reach out. We have something like 2,000 slides. We're really out there trying to help to build trust in society around this exciting opportunity by providing facts. We are in the facts business. We are a trust provider business. So whatever we have in terms of information, in terms of research, is yours to have and yours to use. So by all means, please do reach out. If there is anything you need, if I have it, it's yours. If I don't have it, I will try to point you towards where you can find it. This is about collaboration. We're in this together. And if we want it to succeed, and we must succeed in this, because it is part of a better future, then we need to work together and we need to share in this. Because as I started, I would like to close. I believe it is the most amazing times we have the privilege to live in, and now is the time to do amazing things together. So if I can help a little bit with that, I'll be your guest.